Hello, everyone, and welcome to Vegas Legal Magazine podcast. I'm Mark Fierro with Vegas Legal Magazine publisher Tyler Morgan. Joining us today, Fierro Communications Vice President Jeff Haney. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Dennis Hof, who died Tuesday at his Love Ranch in Crystal, Nevada, was a well-known brothel owner, entrepreneur, restaurateur, and a star of the HBO series Cat House. He was the owner of 7 legal brothels in Nevada. He passed away after a party for his 72nd birthday that was attended by the likes of Joe Arpaio, Grover Norquist, Ron Jeremy. At the time of his death, he was running for a seat in the Nevada State Legislature. With us today, Kacey Ligon, also Cassandra Clare, who worked for Dennis Hof at the Love Ranch, Bunny Ranch, and Harry Mooney's Chicken Ranch. Kacey and our other guest, Thomas Chee, met while Thomas was helping Dennis Hof in Carson City with government affairs. Dennis had asked Thomas to help him sell his properties. Thank you both for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Absolutely.
So what I would like to hear most is, what was this guy like? I spoke to him. You arranged a phone call for us one time, and I spoke to him. He's climbing through the phone. He's like the happiest guy on earth and a real Mr. Personality, and wanted to be a legislator for some reason. What was he like working with?
He was great. I never had any complaints about him. He was always attentive. If I ever had any problems, I know I could go to him. He was a great guy, and he was always the life of the party. So it was really shocking to hear the news because he was just so full of life. I mean, he was in bad health at the time, but he was so full of life that it was sad to see him go.
I do want to put this in perspective for those of us who don't know anything about us. When we think of prostitution and we think of prostitutes, you worked as a prostitute for how long with him?
A couple years.
Okay, so we think of that pimps they're using coercion, they're using beatings, they're using threats, they're withholding food, sleep, all of these things. Sounds like the exact opposite of that. Did you ever see anything where he's leaning on anybody in any way, shape, or form?
No, not. I mean, I always saw him being a leader and somebody that was like, you could always go to him. So no, I never saw any problems or had heard any complaints from other girls. I mean, he was just a fun guy to hang out with. So.
I do want to put this in perspective. I don't mean to dominate the conversation, but I do want to put this in perspective. Thomas, you knew him as a businessman. This was a very successful businessman. You know, he wasn't just selling sex. He knew the value of square footage of a gas station, how to turn it into a restaurant, how to turn it into a cash cow to buy properties out of state. This was a thinking man. This was not somebody who was just kind of mumbling through life and just happened to have millions of dollars thrown at him.
No, his planning, his strategy, even when he would explain things to me about the importance of real estate and development and land, and Dennis was involved in so many things too, not just people look at him as just a brothel owner, but whether it came to banking and finance and especially real estate, he had bought gas stations from when he was really young in Phoenix, Arizona, and he was going north with that. He was asking me about Bitcoin machines and cryptocurrencies and being on the cutting edge of cryptocurrencies and banking. He was always first and foremost a businessman, and people even had to remind me of that when I was doing business with him, that like, whoa, Dennis doesn't care about the drama. It's all about making money, and it's all about promoting himself, whether it means him speaking at Oxford. Just sitting down with him, the lessons that you would learn about the emotional roller coaster. And even Kacey would stop me sometimes when I was dealing with a client that wanted to buy his property from Berlin, Germany, or Washington, D.C., where I'm getting a lot of calls now. And she's like, wait, Thomas, don't ever forget, Dennis is a businessman.
Let me ask both of you this. Traditionally, in Nevada, if you were the owner of a brothel or more than one, your strategy was to keep an extremely low profile. Don't put your name out there. Don't put your image out there. be as deferential as possible to the legislature and so forth. And this guy took just the polar opposite approach. He went on TV, HBO, Howard Stern, the whole thing. It seems as if he was frequently at war with various government officials. I mean, he just took that old stereotype and shattered it and did everything the other way. What was his philosophy as far as that goes, and how was he able to pull it off for so long in his career and his life?
I think that's why he was a marketing genius, is because he did put himself out there. He realized that this was a circus and that he needed to be the ringleader. And so the more he put himself out there, the more business it brought in for him, the more business it brought in for the girls. The Cat House was, extremely successful. So he knew what he was doing.
Has he already, in the recent years with him running and getting involved in politics and everything, has he already sort of passed on management of the businesses to other people? I mean, like, what are we talking about this guy leaving behind now that he's gone? I mean, are his business affairs completely intact still? Does he have family left behind? What do you guys know of him?
Good question. I don't.
No, yes. I wonder about that.
To put this in
Yeah.
perspective,
That's
Thomas's role in this was to help him. I think he knew that he was winding down and he was selling off his properties. And so now that's the big question: is did he die intestate? Did he?
But was he still like very active in his businesses?
Dennis
recently?
was completely active. No,
Yeah.
I had no idea that Dennis was ill in that regard. I mean, the last time we had lunch, he told me that he was having eye surgery at the Mayo Clinic, and he was being checked. But Dennis was active. He was everywhere. He was always involved in a speech, a lecture. Dennis is very generous, incredibly generous. And the celebrities, even when we were there, Kacey would point out somebody. He's like, "Do you know who that is? That's Andy Kaufman's manager. That's a musician. There's a famous rap star. Thomas, I got to go because we have some celebrity clients that just walked in." And then in the mornings, he would come back from breakfast with government leaders that he was meeting. At one point or another, every president, prime minister, senator, or congressman wanted to either know Dennis or they wanted to know the girls that he worked with. And that's why Carson City is such a valuable place. And in a sense, I think that Dennis is also the leader in the sense that when people look at Las Vegas, Nevada, or Nevada in general, they think of big names in gaming like Sheldon Adelson and Steve Wynn, but they don't look at the people that are involved in mining and the brothel business and the other businesses that bring tourism to Las Vegas. Dennis promoted a side to Las Vegas that people think they want to hide, but they can't. In the same way that Hunter S. Thompson made Las Vegas an adventure with his book Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Dennis Hof made Nevada an adventure. North in Reno, Carson City, and south in Las Vegas. How many men out there, how many grandfathers, fathers, sons, had on their bucket list that one day I want to meet Dennis Hof and shake his hand. One day I want to be at one of his brothels.
You bring up a good point there. The flip side of that is the women who worked for him. And Kacey, we spoke briefly, and far be it from us to exploit legal prostitution, but we're interested. How do you start? I know that you had a turkey ranch at one point, so you're
Yeah.
living at you're a regular mom, right? And
Regular mom.
you're where and you're doing what when you have the great idea that you're going to do this?
Well, I mean, I've done a lot of different things. So I was a surrogate mother twice. I have 2 teenage girls myself. I had this turkey farm that I worked for years, and I came out of a really bad relationship that I was at this point in my life where I was like, well, what am I going to do next? And I need to make money. And so a friend of mine invited me to Las Vegas, and I honestly had no desire ever to come to Vegas. Like, it was
on
never,
you.
I know, I didn't know, but it was exciting. And I came out here and we were talking, and he says something about the chicken ranch or something about a brothel. And the chicken ranch was the only place that I knew of because I did theater, and I did the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, which was based off the ranch. And so, and I thought it was a made up place too. I didn't even know. And he said, "Oh no, I didn't go out there. Those girls are they're too high priced. They're like top of the line girls." And he goes, "They don't hire just normal girls off the street like you." And I was like, "What does that mean?"
The gauntlet has been thrown
I
down.
know. I was like, "I don't think so." So it like ate at me, and I got online and I applied, and I was shocked when they called me back, and they were like, "Yeah, you can come out here." And so I packed up all my stuff from Missouri and was like, "I'm gonna come out here and give this a go." And
Well, if you were shocked when they wrote back, how shocked were you after the first night?
it was really interesting. I had some experiences that I'll never forget. Like, it was, and I remember one of the other girls coming up to me, and she's like, "So, like, what's your thing? What's your deal?" And I'm like, "Nothing. I'm just me." And she's like, "Good, stick with that."
We'll work with that for a while.
So I just, it wasn't something that I ever thought that I was going to make into a career, or, I just wanted to try it and see how it turned out. And I really liked it. And, I met a lot of interesting people, and eventually made my way up to Dennis and worked up at the Bunny Ranch. So that was the ultimate goal. Like, if you want to go anywhere, that's, Dennis is like the highest place you can go. So
Well, here, this is the part that intrigues me. Now, that kind of movie version is women are forced into this, and it's the last stop, and but when we talked, it sounded like there was a sense of safety, security, that there was a law that was on your side as opposed to getting ready to pick you up. And it seemed as if there was a sense of camaraderie, the sense of friendship that extended not just to the girls, but to Dennis and the other guys that worked there as well.
yeah, I always joked because it was like more of a sorority house than it was a brothel. I fell in love with a lot of the girls that worked there, and we joined this like sisterhood. And the guys that come through, I felt like a counselor 90% of the time. I'm like, they wanted somebody to talk to, they wanted somebody to listen to them. They just needed somebody, that wasn't on the other side of a computer, or, they needed actual physical contact.
And think about this, because we think about this brothel and it's sitting there, and that's what we see as this brothel. But if you travel through Nevada, as I do quite frequently, and you look out in a distant horizon, there are little lights out there, the great distances, 80 miles away, 40 miles, 50. So there isn't a lot of human contact, and there is a lot of depression. And I can imagine that you would end up being a counselor, because all of those men, all those people that are out there, they have to find some sense of humanity.
Yeah. I mean, it was probably the best and worst part of my job, because I loved helping these people, and I loved getting to know them and stuff like that. But then there's also a sense of like, I'm so sorry that but I will help you try to create human contact as much as possible. But I loved what I did because of that.
Well, how much of the customer base was that? What you're talking about? Perhaps a gentleman who was maybe married for many years and lost his wife, or someone who perhaps is disabled in some way and therefore isn't able to have an intimate connection like many of us are. Did that represent a lot of the customers who came in?
There was a lot of customers that, had some kind of issue. In fact, there was a friend of mine who, a mother brings in her disabled son like once every few months to come in. He can't do anything, but he just likes talking to a girl. He likes having a girl hold his hand, and she loves the fact that he's able to do that. So I think it brings a lot of good to people.
It's interesting. You think of like the brothels as like, it's like a sideshow of people with like no moral value, and then you hear stuff like this. It's fascinating.
Oh, the girls!
Really is.
The girls will come through, and Kacey will pick them up, and they'll all have lunch together. And when I'm sitting there listening and they go, oh, I got this guy and he just became a widow, he's a new client. And I didn't understand what they were talking about. And they said, oh, we get a lot of men and their wives will die of cancer or their girlfriends will leave them and they haven't spoken to anybody. They don't know who to hold hands with. And they just want to cry on somebody's shoulder. And they tell stories all the time. They're part nuns and part nurses.
I mean, the one thing that as crazy as this business is, this will tell you just how crazy it is. This is a guy who made millions and millions of dollars and fought every session of the state legislature to try and get taxed. It was one of his big goals in life is to pay tax to the state of Nevada. The thinking being that once you're paying tax, that it's much more difficult to get rid of when you've got this income coming in. And he always felt the threat. All brothel owners, I think, rightly do feel that it's only a matter of time until all the brothels are closed down. At the end of his life, that had consumed him. He was trying to keep authorities, county authorities throughout the state from shutting his places down. Did he feel like they were closing in on him, or did he think that he was winning at the end?
The bureaucracy and the politics was bizarre in the sense of economic activity also in regards to what you're saying. And when you were talking about the lights out in the middle of nowhere financially, Dennis would he had a business in a place where nobody operated businesses, and I would drive to go see him and see all these restaurants and car mechanics and gas stations that would not have had customers if people hadn't gone to his business. And he employed a lot of people, and he had restaurants, and he bought properties. There are whole communities that can give thanks to the fact that Dennis invested in land that nobody wanted out there. So he provided jobs, he provided other businesses a way to make money, and that's one of the significance of how do you get somebody from Washington, D.C., Tokyo, Japan, to come to an area outside of Carson City and go to a hotel, a gas station, a restaurant? Those restaurants and strip malls would not be there if it wasn't for Dennis.
And that comes back to Tyler's original point about what's going to happen next. I mean, is there anyone out there who can begin to even attempt to step in to fill his shoes?
Yeah, I wonder
nobody could
what's
replace
gonna happen.
Dennis. Nobody could replace Dennis in the same way that nobody could replace Tyler to be the publisher of Vegas Legal Magazine, or
I'll take that as a
replace
compliment.
Dennis was the top. He was the best. He was asked to come to Paris to speak to the mayor. He was asked to come to Oxford to speak at Oxford University. I mean, there are presidents and leaders and prime ministers around the world that have not been asked to come to Oxford. And I've been places where he got standing ovations. Even when we talked in December, his book had just got an option to be made into a movie. And last night I was wondering, they're probably in overtime right now casting to get that movie done. And then every time you were there, Kacey was telling me about, oh yeah, this rock star just came in, and and I can't say his name, but that was another thing too. The girls were so discreet about it. Nobody talked about what was going on and who was going there, but there were always celebrities and multimillionaires and government leaders surrounding Dennis.
So what happens to your efforts, because you now no longer have a client, you don't represent the estate? Do you just stop trying to sell, or do you continue to entertain offers until his estate becomes clear?
I'm taking all the notes, and I'm taking everything. I literally run around with 3x5-inch cards because I'm getting so many phone calls now, and even at 3 in the morning I'm getting calls, and just telling people as soon as we find out, because right now, just 2 hours ago, I said, look, I want to be at his funeral. I'm more worried about his funeral arrangements. I want to make sure that I'm there. I want to make sure that I clear everything off my calendar. But there are a lot of developments that are going on right now in Vegas with real estate that I'm involved in. Dennis's was the best because it was a great way to be close to Dennis and to hear from him and to find out, because whenever you're with him, you're learning something that you're not going to learn in the newspapers and you're not going to learn on the magazine.
Well, let's get down to nuts and bolts. So there's 6 or 7 properties total statewide
Well, he only asked me to sell the 3.
in the South.
And we're in the South. And the odd thing was when I started selling them in December and contacting my buyers, he became so much more popular that the price started rising. So one of the properties, Cherry Patch, he said was $750,000, and then one of the brothels was $1.3 million. And when I went to my buyers with that, they waited and hesitated too long, because by April the price had doubled because
Wow.
it was so popular and he was getting so much attention. He was a master promoter.
He has so of those properties, you continue to at least take offers with the idea that they'd be forwarded to the estate, and once this gets settled, it may very well be that he has a comprehensive will, and
Does he
it
have
won't take
family?
long at all.
Do you know? Does he have family?
I believe he has a strange family. I mean,
Yeah.
in his book he mentioned something about it, but
And of course, they'll have claim to it. They'll have complete claim to it, unless he left them $1 each. They'll have complete claim to take over the
Yeah.
property.
Well, and his campaign continues.
Well, Dennis didn't just become
That's the other thing.
Dennis has a fascinating story in the sense that he didn't just become a brothel owner overnight. I mean, Dennis was he was a loving son. He cared deeply about his father. Dennis also had wives, and so he was married and he had 2 daughters, and nobody knows what's happened with them or what's happened with that relationship. And again, it's because Dennis would always go back to focusing on business and growth and real estate and finding buyers. I mean,
And he still might win this election because his
Yeah,
name
that-
is going to remain on the ballot.
Dennis Hof would appreciate the fact that he is, in fact, campaigning even as we speak, and will be for the next 3 weeks, and could possibly win because
What-
it's overwhelming Republican
Right.
areas of the state.
But just
Also,
the
though-
people, just his passing, the people supporting him, just want to just give him the vote, just
Yeah.
to like an ode to him and his life.
yeah.
Also, don't forget that Dennis was incredibly popular. There were times when we would have the most intense business meetings with somebody from Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden, this beautiful girl would come out of nowhere and just come over and say, "Hi, Dennis," and sit on his lap. And I was thinking, oh, is this meeting over? I don't know. Because I wasn't used to that in a corporate meeting at all. And then there was another time when we literally had 3 of the most important phone calls from the wealthiest buyers, and it was around 4 o'clock. And he's like, "Thomas, we got to finish this meeting because I have a girl that's coming over to see me right now." And I go, "You can't do this. No, we have to meet with this buyer.
First things
We have-"
first.
And he's like,
Yeah, I'm outta
"No."
here.
He's like, I got, so
Yeah, she's
yeah.
here, you
And
gotta
she
go.
walked in, and I literally knew the meeting was over. I got up and left right there.
So here's the thing. When we hear parties, we think of little hats and perhaps hot dogs. Tell us about these parties that he was so well known for, that NBA players and big stars and everybody would come out of the woodwork to attend these things.
Yeah.
What kind of parties are we talking
They
about?
were fun. In fact, I was just showing Thomas some pictures that I found of the Halloween party from last year where he was dressed up as Madame Suzette. So he's got this full gown on. But they were always wild. They always had some kind of crazy theme, and everybody looked forward to it. And yeah.
So are
it was-
women running around naked? Our viewers
No.
want to know.
I got
We don't,
Suzette
of
usually
course.
keeps a good rein on the girls. Suzette's the one that runs around and she's like, "No, put that back on," But no, they were just fun. I never no, there wasn't any like crazy stuff that I saw, but he always had a good time.
Casey's used to it though, because
Yeah.
she partied with him for so long and she had so much fun. I was there, and so from the morning to the afternoon and the afternoon to the evening, I saw parties and things that I'd never seen before. And I would ask her, I was like, "What is that on the wall? What is that behind the display case? Who is that person? And what's going on in that room? And what are you pulling out of your suitcase?" I mean, yeah, there were many times when I've been scared and I didn't know, but Casey's also a professional singer, so Dennis had a lot of singers around him, and that's one of the ways that they were playing guitar and everything. I mean, he was always surrounded by the best musicians, the best performers. it was for her. It was there were a lot of things I was not used to. I'd never seen before.
He had a way of making everybody feel special too. So like
Yeah.
even he came to my birthday one year. He just like showed up and he was like, "I'm here because I heard it's your birthday," and like he was always, if there wasn't a party that he created, he was finding a party to create. So,
And he married people. Dennis had a certificate because
yeah.
we're having a baby in 2 months, and an anniversary of when we met. And so Dennis says, "How's Kacey? Is she doing well?" Yeah, we're even talking about having you marry us at the ranch.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Absolutely," because Dennis married people. I guarantee that any gentleman, any grandfather, father, son, anybody that goes to one of his ranches, you will see things you've never seen before. You will hear stories that they don't write about in books and stuff. And it's amazing. I sit there in awe till 6 a.m, just listening and not saying a word and hearing these stories. And the girls are like, "Oh, Thomas, this is normal."
This is just
Yeah.
a Tuesday.
yeah, you're right. I am a little jaded because like I remember once I'm sitting at the bar and another girl comes out in lingerie and she's holding a leash with a guy and he's like crawling across the floor and we're like, "Hey, how's it going?" She's like, "Hey," and as she's pulling him along, like, "Come on." And it was just like, yeah, typical Tuesday.
It's a living.
Even in the car ride over here, when we were driving in the car, Casey was like, "Oh, here's the picture that I have of us at our Halloween party. Here's the picture that I had. Oh, you never saw this picture." And sometimes in our closet, she's going through boxes and she's pulling out books and pictures and the wildest gatherings, the wildest parties that you'll ever see in the world. We're not talking Singapore. We're not talking Rome, Italy. We're talking, this is Dennis Hof's world.
Anyway.
Yeah. When we first got together, he was writing about me, and there was some times where he's just like, "Okay, what did you say?" Like his hand is cramping. He's like, "Say that again."
Yep.
Even now to this day, that's probably why he carries so many cards around with him, is because he's like, I'll say some sort of story, and he's like, "Wait a minute, say that again."
And I've never even heard the vocabulary. The girls are like sisters, and they have a relationship with each other that you don't find in women outside. And some of them, and they have a vocabulary. They say things all the time, and I don't even understand what the word is, even if it's in English, because they have their own way of communicating and their own experiences that they've shared.
Well, thank you both so much for joining us today. It's ironic that this next chapter of Dennis Hof's life could be the most interesting of all, in a very, very interesting life. And who knows, he may well find himself getting elected.
I'm
yet.
going to go vote for him.
just for that.
And,
I'm gonna vote for
there
him.
might be an Academy Award on the way for his film.
There you go. And with that, we call it a day. The Vegas Legal Magazine podcast. I want to sincerely thank both Thomas Chee and Kacey Ligon, Tyler Morgan, publisher of Vegas Legal Magazine, Jeff Haney, Vice President of Fiero Communications, the friendliest PR company in town. Remember to like and share the Vegas Legal Magazine podcast on Facebook. Also catch us on YouTube, iTunes, or my personal favorite, Stitcher. And for all of you out there with a story idea, or an axe to grind, get a hold of Vegas Legal, the leading magazine in Southern Nevada legal market. You can call Tyler at
702-222-3476.
reach out. Tell us. Tell your friends. Have a good one. We're out of here.